Well, here we are.
Again,
Here we are again.
on session 36 today. We had a new comment on a previous video, number 17, and the viewer has a comment and a question. We were talking about love, having pure love for all mankind, and this person said, love all mankind, ? And all is in all caps. Love all mankind. Maybe this grace is why we will be on the path for many lifetimes yet. Very perceptive. To accept that everything is perfect karma, the good and the negative energies of humans, that requires a patience and acceptance I have not yet surrendered to. In concept, it makes sense. The actual adaptation of the action, ... Where's the switch? And I don't know if they mean the switch to turn it on, but basically, how do we switch from normal emotions of love and hate and opinions to this, what we consider a higher viewpoint, where we see everything as important and necessary in our path? And this person is right that it takes several lifetimes of work. Maybe some of us have been working on it for 1 or 2 lifetimes in the past already, hopefully. But the switch, and we answered part of this in last week's session, number 35. So by the time this gets posted, you can go back and review that part in session 35, which is probably going to end up around the 18-minute mark after edits are made. And it answers several aspects of this very question. But what do you think? What do we need to make that switch?
The answer is probably the highest practice in yoga, which is, we say it all the time, non-attachment, vairagya. Also, it requires clear seeing, which means not seeing material things with our physical eyes, that we can't possibly see all the reasons and patterns and lessons.
In 35, we did talk about this idea that emotions are not elevated by using the emotional capacity. We have to use the mind because it's the mind that creates emotions in order to elevate those emotions. The mind is the key to all of this. The mind is also the entryway to inspiration, because that's how we enter into the state of samadhi. We want to get beyond the mind, but in order to do that, we have to use the mind as the pathway. So that's part of it. And another thing that we have mentioned before is that every part of life serves a purpose. If we could see all of our previous lifetimes, and it's a blessing that we can't, we would be horrified with some of the things that we have done in other lifetimes. And we inherit that karma, but it also provided necessary experience. Karma knows how to bring us along. It requires that we be responsible for all of our actions, that we see and feel and evaluate the results of what those previous actions engendered. As we do that, we realize that some of the people that we hate are people who have the same traits today that we maybe had in former lifetimes. So we wouldn't hate ourselves. Hopefully we wouldn't, because that doesn't help anything. It's like the Buddha said, hatred never is a response for hatred. It can only be helped through love and compassion. That's how we uplift other people, is not by hating them. There's no reward for that. It's about realizing that they are where they are because of previous actions, that we have been in that spot in the past. And the best we can do is to not throw more negative energy at the situation.
What's that saying? I don't know who coined the term, but the first step towards world peace is eliminating anger and hatred in our own hearts. And that doesn't, most people, that wouldn't seem right. It wouldn't seem proper or appropriate. How's that going to, well, it's true. If everybody did that, then the world would be at peace.
Yes, and the point is that we develop these through the practice. And it's about seeing clearly, as you mentioned at the very beginning. The more we practice this, the more we let go of all the more negative emotions and thoughts in our own aura. That's how we purify our own aura. And by sharing that purer emanation with other people, we inspire them. If we dwell on the lower part of our own nature, that helps not us, and it doesn't help anyone else either. It's about using the mind and the ability to analyze that we come up with this. You have to learn not the practices first, you have to learn the theory and at least have a concept that perhaps there is some truth in it. And once you start applying that, then you see the results. It's when you see those results that it becomes exciting.
I'd like to add a couple of things here. I think it's important to note that when we say love all, was a specific quote, have love for all life? Is that
well, we said it's important to develop love for all mankind, all humankind, and for all life.
Let's talk for 2 points that I'd like to address. The concept of everything in manifestation, everything being sacred, is one concept, just real quick, we'll touch on. And then also, the word love is just, it has so many connotations, and we use it in so many different contexts. And we're not at all saying that you have to love Jeffrey Dahmer like you love your partner. We're not saying that, because that's not the same kind of love that someone else might be thinking about. That might not be the same kind of love KH describes if he ever uses the word, which I don't think he does, because so many of these words like God and love are personal, really. They're personal. So the word love, we might want to spend some time clarifying, maybe not right now, but clarifying what that means. I'd like to offer that love, when we say it in this context, and maybe always, love implies a connection. Love implies an energy that is a connection. It doesn't mean lust. It doesn't mean I need you by my side always, because obviously you're not going to have that kind of love for someone in the Himalayas that you've never met. You might have that for your partner. So that's a different kind of love. So decide what you mean by love and see if there's a way that you can apply that to every single living thing, every single life in the universe, really. And then it changes things, because it's not the same kind of love you have with your passionate romantic partner. And then in several schools of Tantra yoga, which, again, I always have to preface the word Tantra, it just means energy use and manipulation of your breath and your aura, your prana. There is a concept, a very clear foundational concept, that everything is sacred, and that's what this means. Nothing is improper in a sense. There are things that we don't want to do, we don't want to emulate, we don't want to go and commit, an active shooter situation, but everything is happening for a reason. There's a reason why active shooters happen. There's a reason why suffering happens. Of course, we don't want to perpetuate it, but there is a reason. We've been saying this in so many different ways. It's not by mistake. Humans make messed up choices. it's our emotions. It's our anyway. Let's
So-
not dwell too much. But yeah, I wanted to share those two things.
Unless we specify otherwise, we are almost always talking about unconditional love, that he's talking about respect for all life, this spiritual quality that every being has within them. And that's all we mean, is that we embrace everyone as part of us. We're all one, something. So it's
one life.
And it's helpful. That's the main thing. This is the only helpful way to treat other individuals, animals, our entire world, is through kindness. All right, let's move on. We're in the midst of 3 letters that were written to A.O. Hume, but were also for Sinnett. He was living during the hot season with Hume in Shimla, and just like the previous year, they were receiving some very good instructions. We're in the middle of 3 letters, 65, 66, and 67, and we're on 66. In the first part of this letter, K.H. was explaining the 7 rounds, and in some places in the past, he has mentioned branchlets. I want to show a graphic that comes from a book, which is actually very good, but it's hard to find. Globes, Rounds, and Races, put out by Concord Grove Press. We use this as a study guide for a whole series of classes that we taught 20 years ago. Well, not 20, 15 years ago. And it's a very good series if you can find it. It's all taken from the Secret Doctrine, but this is a graphic that was used in this that explains this whole concept instead of with globes, more as a branching system. And if you take this limb as one of those globes and show it more like a tree, we could turn this slightly so that it's more indicative, because this would be globe A. This entire branch would be globe A. And what K.H. is explaining is that it makes 7 sub-passages. So it reaches whatever the monad is expressing, reaches that globe, but then it doesn't go to the next globe. Instead, it goes through a series of experiences in that first globe. And first, it goes off onto one branch where it has a series of 7 different types of experience, and then it goes to a different branch. So it makes the entire circuit of the branch, but then at each sub-branch, it also has a series. So 1, 2, and then 3. Now, we introduced our own chart that we came up with because I couldn't find anything else that really expresses this as a chart. So using that same branching technique, K.H. explains that as you go through this round, this makes up one round, you have a series of 7 types of experience in that same type of kingdom. But even then, there are numerable other sub-rounds within that round. So 7 times 7 times 7. And if you add them all up, it comes out to 343. Now, let's explain that in the past questions, we're halfway through this letter, Hume had come up with the terminology of inmetaliations, inherbations, zoonizations, and incarnations, indicating expressing through mineral bodies, plant bodies, animal bodies, and then human bodies. We also learned that there are 3 more levels, 3 more rounds. We are currently in the 4th round, which developed the human type body that we are using today, starting with the caveman type, moving up through all the various types. And then in the next round, the majority of humanity will reach the level of adept, or arhat, as he calls it, arhat.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is the physical planet moving in a circle? In that scheme where we're going through the 4th round right now, is it called a round because it's physically going somewhere in a circle?
No, it's a round because all of these are concentric with the Earth. We express it as a round, like there are 7 globes, but as we learn, they are states of consciousness, all connected with it.
We're calling them globes because this is the actual transformation of the planet itself and the life forms on it.
Right. So it's easy to get confused. When we speak of a globe, we think physical, a globe.
But an inmetaliation can be a globe that's not physical.
Yes.
Because in the astral
Absolutely.
realm, for example, and I wonder if these correspond at all to the planes of the solar system, the physical, the astral, the mental. We don't know. Do we know if they correspond to those in a way?
Yes, of course they do.
Because it's challenging for me to grasp. This is out of
It's
out of context a little bit when we talk about these things. Like, I don't know where to put that. Like, I don't know where to think of or what to think of. Is it the solar system that we're talking about? Is it
We're
the
talking
planet?
about our planet within the solar system.
Okay.
So it's important for us to bring things down to a certain focal point. Here we're talking about one planet, Earth, and all of the variations of existence that take place connected to this Earth. Only this part is dense physical matter. This is going to be somewhere in the astral realm, mental realms, etc., etc. There are actually 7.
So 4th round. So 1st round. I don't think we've ever correlated the numbers to the letters here. So 1st round is A.
No, one round is the entire circuit.
So we're in the 4th round, but you said that.
Okay, first round was inmetaliation. So it had to go through all of these 343 permutations, except that I think KH says they do skip some of those in the higher levels.
The 1st round and then the 2nd round did the same thing?
Second round was to get the animal kingdom going.
I don't know where to put that. I don't know where to think of or what to think of. Is it the solar system that we're talking about? Is it
We're
the
talking
planet?
about our planet within the solar system.
Okay.
So it's important for us to bring things down to a certain focal point. Here we're talking about one planet, Earth, and all of the variations of existence that take place connected to this Earth. Only this part is dense physical matter. This is going to be somewhere in the astral realm, mental realms, etc., etc. There are actually 7.
So 4th round. So 1st round. I don't think we've ever correlated the numbers to the letters here. So 1st round is A.
No, one round is the entire circuit.
So we're in the 4th round, but you said that.
Okay, first round was inmetaliation. So it had to go through all of these 343 permutations, except that I think KH says they do skip some of those in the higher levels.
The 1st round and then the 2nd round did the same thing?
Second round was to get the plant kingdom going.
Okay.
And then the 3rd round, the animals and the beginning
Okay.
of what would become the human body had to be developed. And only in this fourth round do we express, and it's still the same monads, but in this fourth round, at some point, we attain individualization.
In the fourth round.
Meaning that we have, as one human being, one monad that is assigned to it.
In other words, one soul to one body. We talked last session or 2 sessions ago how that's not the case in the other realms. In the mineral, plant, and animal kingdom, it's not one soul to one body.
Right.
I think this is very important. I know we're belaboring it a lot.
But it doesn't hurt to repeat it several times, too.
Let's mention again that the fourth round is where humans are developing. And the root races, which we haven't really talked about that much either, the root races would correspond to the letters then, I would guess.
Remember, you can follow some of our other videos and skip this completely. But if you're seriously interested in this part of it, it's because we are in training to become eventually planetary spirits, the ones who help in all of this system. So wouldn't it make sense to at least give you a little bit of a glimpse of what that entails? With regard to the fourth round, the round wherein the human kingdom is fully established and the entire round is devoted to humanity, to the development of the human kingdom, I got a little bit confused. So let's recapitulate. In this fourth round, it has to do the entire round of the 7 globes, as they are called. And on each one, these 7 sub-globes, you could call them sub-A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And even then, on each one, there are miniature cycles that it has to go through. So, once again, referring to this chart, in this fourth round, that is the first time that the system becomes fully physical. And it is gradually coming down towards that all during this fourth round. So in the first part of it, we're still way up in the spiritual part. And this first round, I had to go back to the secret doctrine to get a little more information on that. The first race, the first root race, took place on planet A, on globe A, which is still the Earth, but it's at a very spiritual level. This is what HPB said about that first root race. They are called sometimes the self-born or the sons of God, which are the astral shadows of their progenitors. Now, what that means, I'm not sure, but obviously it's very vague.
And astral is certainly not physical, but it is a realm. It's a realm of existence.
And I think she was speaking relationship-wise more than what we would call the astral realm.
Okay.
The body was devoid of understanding, mind, intelligence, and will. Manas was not there yet.
They didn't even have mind yet at that point.
And we'll learn later that you really can't call these humans. They're not really man, as we would think of man. They're the sketch of what it will become, so to speak.
Now, this group of entities is referred to as the
first root race of the fourth round.
The fourth round. And the fourth round is the round that the humans are developed.
Right.
And that's why there is a root race of human in this. Okay, it's not.
Right. So the first one is basically an idea by the great architect, you might say, the Dian Chohans.
But we should also still keep in mind, though, that these entities have passed through the mineral kingdom, passed through the plant kingdom, and lived millions of years as animals.
Exactly.
So there is intelligence, but it's not human mind yet. It's more instinct. It's more connectedness on the very spiritual level.
But there's one thing also to keep in mind. Even in the animal round, which was the third round, this planet was part of the system, but it wasn't yet fully physical. It was only partially physical. So with each round, the entire system shifts downward, but not all at once. It's a very gradual process. And then during the pralaya, I'm assuming it stops. And then with the next round, it continues its downward shift. Does that make sense?
It does. I'm just thinking, though, of how animals and rocks and plants existed on a globe that's not totally physical. So.
Well, they could be like ethereal, for one thing.
Right.
And it's all gradual, and it all overlaps.
Right.
So we just have to use our imaginations with this. The second root race, which would have been this planet B, still is not even astral or physical as we know it. It's still very spiritual. That root race, it was called Hyperborean from the north. For what reason, I don't know, because they weren't physical yet. They emanated, of course, from the first root race, and this second race was called the Sweatborn, which is referring to the means of reproduction. How do you reproduce on one of these very high levels?
If I remember correctly, John Algeo compares that to a cellular mitosis process.
Yeah, something similar, right, similar to that, a budding process.
Yes.
Exactly. And so that second root race was the first primitive race that had a weak spark of what, I don't know. Whether it's intellectual, I don't think so yet.
Spirituality?
But it may have to do with spiritual development, I'm guessing. The third root race becomes a little more comprehensible, and that's the one that is referred to as Lemurian. And, of course, was the offshoot of the second root race. But this time, it comes down into the astral realm and even the beginnings of the physical realm. This third root race is referred to sometimes as twofold because they were androgynous, both male and female characteristics which were starting to form now during this third root race. At first, they are only shells, but the last ones are inhabited or informed by the Dhyan Chohans. That's very interesting. I think what she's referring to there is the period in history which was about 18.5 million years ago, when beings from a different system in our own solar system came to establish young humanity. They actually took upon themselves these bodies which were beginning to be formed, and they served as the leaders of humanity.
Would one of those be considered the Manu of our race?
No, he was here long before that.
The Manu would have started the first root race, maybe.
I believe, actually, I think you're probably right. I think he was the first one.
And this is also where some of the myths of Adam and Eve come from, and other creation myths, where there were original humans and then they created the rest.
That, and also the fact that we had gods living among us. Mm-hmm. And these gods were incredibly advanced. That may explain how the pyramids and these ancient monuments were built, because if you've got beings who are super advanced, and yet you've got thousands or millions, possibly, of unadvanced human beings, then you've got the workers to do the work, but you have somebody that has to plan it and know the techniques and how to do it. So possibly that's an explanation for that. Then, of course, she goes into, in the secret doctrine, the explanation of how we went from androgynous beings, and the first ones were more animal-like than they were human-like, to where they began laying eggs, at first soft and leathery, and then later they became hard like bird eggs. And then eventually the eggs were retained within the body. As we do now, it became the realm where the infant was gestated. We could call it a gestation. And then it is born alive. So that was a very long process that took millions of years. And now the fourth root race was the Atlantean. And that's just because of the continent where they developed, really. And the continent doesn't exist anymore. We'll learn more about that as we go along.
We didn't mention, but the other root races, the Lemurians and even the Hyperboreans, even though they weren't totally physical yet, they had relatively physical locations like a continent. So Atlantis is kind of well known as a continent or a landmass. Well, some people who study esoteric history know about another continent called Lemuria. And then there may have been a Hyperborean continent, and there's been sketches and talks about how it was at around the North Pole from the north. But again, it wasn't a physical Earth at the time. So just a side note that each of these root races had a location, a continent where they lived, on which they lived.
We have just passed the midpoint of our humanity, our spiritual growth as human beings, and we're on our way back up again. And we'll have to retrace every step as we ascend, and we will become more and more spiritual until we are ready to really, as a race, all of us who have made it that far, to continue as adepts in training during the next round, the fifth round. And as K.H. pointed out several times, there are quite a number, not a lot when you compare it to all of humanity, but there are a number of individuals who have reached that stage already because they made an extra effort. And the adepts, for example, there wouldn't be any adepts of our own humanity except for the fact that they made that effort and ran ahead of the rest. We emphasize get just a vague concept of it. That's all you need. Let's not belabor this because KH is going to belabor it enough.
Okay.
All right, moving along. I'm reading the questions here that the two guys came up with, and then Paul will read the answers from KH. All right, we're on question 5. We understand that in each of your other 6 kingdoms, a monad similarly performs a complete round. In each round, stopping at each of the 7 stations, and they're performing in each a world ring of 7 lives, one in each of the 7 classes into which each of the 6 said kingdoms are divided. Is this correct? And if so, will you give us the 7 classes of these 6 kingdoms?
If by kingdoms the 7 kingdoms of the earth are meant, then the query is answered in my reply to your question 2. And if so, then 5 out of the 7 are already enumerated. The first 2 are related, as well as the third, to the evolution of the elementals and of the inner kingdom. Should we read that part of question 2 again?
Yeah, we better go back and check on question number 2. He said, below man, there are 3 in the objective and 3 in the subjective region. Remember, he said there were 2 that he wouldn't even bother to talk about because they're completely incomprehensible. With man, a septenary, but no one but an initiate could conceive of 2 of the 3 objective ones. The third is the inner kingdom below the crust of the earth, which we could name but would feel embarrassed to describe. Then he goes on to explain, basically, that it's the elementals. I'm reading the questions here that the 2 guys came up with, and then Paul will read the answers from KH. All right, we're on question 5. We understand that in each of your other 6 kingdoms, a monad similarly performs a complete round. In each round, stopping at each of the 7 stations, and they're performing in each a world ring of 7 lives, one in each of the 7 classes into which each of the 6 said kingdoms are divided. Is this correct? And if so, will you give us the 7 classes of these 6 kingdoms?
Now, is the answer right below it?
Yeah.
Okay. If by kingdoms the 7 kingdoms of the earth are meant, then the query is answered in my reply to your question 2. And if so, then 5 out of the 7 are already enumerated. The first 2 are related, as well as the third, to the evolution of the elementals and of the inner kingdom. Should we read that part of question 2 again?
Yeah, we better go back and check on question number 2. He said, below man, there are 3 in the objective and 3 in the subjective region. Remember, he said there were 2 that he wouldn't even bother to talk about because they're completely incomprehensible. With man, a septenary, but no one but an initiate could conceive of 2 of the 3 objective ones. The third is the inner kingdom below the crust of the earth, which we could name but would feel embarrassed to describe. Then he goes on to explain, basically, that it's the elementals. And so that covers 4 of them. But then what about the other 3? So that's what he's asking about. All right, question number 6. If we are right, then the total existences prior to the man period is 637, and he's using an incorrect figure. Is this correct? Or are there 7 existences in each class of each kingdom? And then he gives another incorrect answer. Or what are the total numbers and how are they divided? One more point. In these lower kingdoms, is the number of lives, so to speak, invariable or does it vary? And if so, how, why, and within what limits?
I forgot, is this Hume or Sinnett asking?
Well, both of them came up with the questions,
Okay.
but they were in Hume's handwriting.
Oh, okay. And so the answer to that one is, not being permitted to give you the whole truth or divulge the number of isolated fractions. We have it on our chart that you made. I am unable to satisfy you by giving you the total number. Rest assured, my dear brother, that to one who does not seek to become a practical occultist, these numbers are immaterial. Even our high chelas are refused these particulars up to the moment of their initiation into adeptship.
Yeah.
These figures, as I have already said, are so interwoven with the profoundest psychological mysteries that to divulge the key to such figures would be to put the rod of power within the reach of all the clever men who would read your book. I wonder how the knowledge of it would give someone the rod of power.
Because there are black magicians who will read this scrupulously and they will divine some aspects of it that will help them in their own black magic.
If they know how it works, yeah. All I can tell you is that Within the solar Manvantara. Ooh, the solar Manvantara. That's different than
of
the
course.
planetary Manvantara.
Yeah, we've only talked about the planetary.
Wow. Okay. The number of existences or vital activities of the monad is fixed. Okay, that's interesting. But there are local variations in number in minor systems, individual worlds, rounds, and world rings, according to circumstances.
Yeah, and so the major parts of it are fixed. You have to go through the 7 globes, on each one the 7 sub-cycles. But then when you get down to the smaller sub-cycles, then it's a little more fluid.
And in this connection, remember also that human personalities are often blotted out, while the entities, whether single or compound, complete all the minor and major circles of necessities under whatsoever form.
Now, this is the first time we're hearing about this.
Yeah.
Certain personalities are blotted out. Now, when
These human personalities are often blotted out.
what he is talking about by personality is what we know as a human: the physical body, the prana, the astral body, our emotions, and our lower mental, the concrete mental faculty.
It's everything that makes up our what
persona,
we think. Our incarnation.
Yeah, so if you describe your friend Sally, that's how you describe
Yes.
her physical appearance, her emotional state, her mental
Demeanor,
state, etc.
yeah, likes, dislikes. He says that human personalities are often blotted out. I wonder why often, because it's almost always they're blotted
Well,
out.
let's see what he says about that.
While the entities, whether single or compound, complete all the minor and major circles of necessities under whatsoever form.
When he says blotted out, it seems to me that he's talking about that they're not actually counted in that numbering system. But let's see what else he has to say.
Well, we're on to question 7 now.
Okay. So far, we hope we are fairly correct. But when we come to man, we have got muddled.
And no wonder, since you were not given the correct information.
All right. So then he adds, there's a 7A, B, and I guess just A and B. Does the monad as man, ape, ape man, and upwards make 1 or 7 rounds as above defined? Now, let me point out that I may have led you astray when I was showing you this chart here, because it's still just a subset of this one here. So in our 4th round, we are making a round of all of these states of being, including extremely spiritual with almost no material component to it, going through all of the 343 permutations. And when we get to this, we're talking about physical bodies. And it's the ethnic groups, it's all of the sub-ethnic groups, all of the different nationalities, so many different experiences that we have to have in these physical bodies. But that's only one aspect of the entire round that we're going through.
If that's the case, when we talk about between 600 and 1,000 lifetimes for our prodigal son journey, that's
Now-
only
No,
in
that,
D?
oh no.
That's just some common theosophical knowledge that we
Oh.
reincarnate 777 times on average. So would that all be
That's in human form, as I understand.
Right, but
when you're talking about thousands, you're talking about other kingdoms as well. The human contains within it all of the experience of all of the other
course.
kingdoms.
it seemed as though this is a journey that we're going on.
Well, it is, but it all takes place, and there are parts of it that are not where we're not in a physical form. We're still on a journey when we're out of physical form. So as you can see, this gets extremely complicated, and we cannot be expected to understand it to any great extent until we become an initiate, which means that you are working hand in hand with the Mahatmas at that point.
Okay. I'm not sure if we finished question 7a.
No, we didn't.
Okay.
Does the monad as man, ape man and upwards, make 1 or 7 rounds as above defined? We gathered the latter.
As a man-ape, he performs just as many rounds and rings as every other race or class. For example, he performs 1 round, and in every planet, from A to G, he performs 1 round, and in every planet, 1 round, and in every planet, from A to G.
From A to G.
So he performs 1 round, and in every planet. From A to G has to go through 7 chief races of ape like man, as many sub-races, etc., etc. See supplementary notes as the above described race. He performs 1 round. Okay, 1 round is the whole thing,
But
right?
yeah, only one part of that round is physical.
Okay, 1 round and in every planet, from A to G. I'm not sure what this is confusing.
This requires intuition. Let's not get too bogged down on this.
Okay.
Or we'll lose all of our viewers.
Okay. I guess let's go to question 7b.
At each round, does this world circle consist of 7 lives in 7 races, which would be 49, or of only 7 lives in 1 race? We aren't certain how you use the word race, whether there is only 1 race to each station of each round, for example, 1 race to each world circle, or whether there are 7 races with their 7 branchlets and a life in either case, in each world circle. From your use of the words, and through each of these, man has to evolve before he passes on to the next higher race, and that 7 times, we aren't sure whether or not there are 7 lives in each branchlet, or as you call it, subrace. Let's say now there may be 7 rounds each with 7 races, each with 7 subraces, and you can throw all of this out because he's wrong. So then he goes through this whole thing of incorrect calculations, and then he says, please set us right here, stating the normal number of lives. The exact numbers will vary owing to idiots, children, etc., not being counted, and how they are divided. I'm giving this because this is 1882 parlance. Idiots, which we wouldn't use that term today, except for someone you don't like. But he's talking about lives that don't count. We'll at least get some information on which lives don't count.
As to the above described race, at each planet, our Earth included, they're not all Earth? Maybe he means our physical planet, Earth, because it's all Earth.
He's including, not just the physical, because,
okay.
Yeah.
As to the above described race, at each planet, our Earth included, I believe he means our physical Earth, because it's all Earth, I think. He has to perform 7 rings through 7 races, 1 in each. So 1 ring in each race, and 7 times 7 offshoots. There are 7 root races and 7 sub-races or offshoots. So this is the first time KH is actually mentioning root race, I believe.
Yeah. Well, I think so.
He might have mentioned
the first time he's mentioned it where it actually starts to have some meaning.
Yes. Our doctrine treats anthropology as an absurd, empty dream of the religionists. and confines itself to ethnology. It is,
So it's not, they don't care about the physical appearance.
it is possible that my nomenclature is faulty. You are at liberty, if that's the case, to change it. What I call race, you would perhaps term stock. I'm sure there's a better word for it than stock as well. But
Well, they used the word stock because they kind of thought of humans as livestock.
yeah,
You have your breeding couple, and then
Yeah,
they have a certain set of characteristics.
though subrace expresses better what we mean than the word family or division or the genus Homo. So subraces might be better than race. Okay. However, to set you right so far, I will say one life in each of the 7 root races, 7 lives in each of the 49 subraces. 7 lives. Or 7 times 7 times 7 equals 343, and add 7 more.
So that makes 350. 350 lifetimes so far he's talking about.
This is, I need to read this one. One life in each of the 7 root races. Okay, but aren't the sub-races sub-root races? Like, so how can there be...
You're belaboring this too much. Let's just say that you have to have experience in each of the major groups of people. And we're not talking strictly physical, we're talking about types of people. And then within those, you have to have 7 within each one of those 7. So trying to put names and features to each one is a waste of time.
Okay. 343. Okay.
And then add 7 more
Yeah.
just for whatever purpose.
And then a series of lives in offshoot and branchlet races, making the total incarnations of man. There it is.
Yeah,
There's
exactly.
777.
But how does he get from 350 to 777? He doesn't explain that.
That's true.
And that may be a mystery, or it may mean that, remember that how he said that with each of the objective realms, there was also a subjective realm.
Yes.
Realm.
Yes. My goodness.
So that may be the answer, but
Wow.
he doesn't come out right out and say it.
I'm really sorry to belabor. I really am. I think we should discuss just a little bit more. This 777 number has been assumed as the kind of average number of incarnations a soul goes through until you're finished with your school of learning on Earth. Now, that's a limited statement. I mean, that's a limited perspective, obviously, because that's only on one station or planet. Can I see what a station or planet is? What does a station look like?
I have no idea.
Okay, what does he mean by planet then? Are the numbers the planets? We don't know that either.
No, I don't know.
So he's saying that we reincarnate 777 times in each station or planet.
Well, let's focus just on the physical. If we have to have 777 lifetimes in a dense physical body, that would seem pretty accurate.
It does, and that's what that's been my understanding since I started studying and teaching this in 2007. Our soul maintains through 777 average. Some are 600, some are 900, some monads would be, and that's the amount of lives that it takes to learn everything on Earth. And then after that, we're ready for adeptship.
Exactly.
But that's only
This
on
is
one.
only in the human realm.
But that's only on one station. He's saying, that's crazy. Let's keep going.
Don't get hung up.
Okay.
On it.
And then he keeps going. The principle of acceleration and retardation applies itself in such a way as to eliminate all the inferior stocks. Wow. And leave but a single superior one to make the last ring.
Okay. So
Whoa.
some of these are eliminated along the way, and not meaning they're destroyed, but that they keeping up. They're laggards, as they're called,
Or the
not ready to move on to become adepts. So, in other words, the population decreases as we go along.
Is he talking about the consciousness or the physical forms like
The
Darwin?
consciousness, well, he's talking about the consciousness.
Okay.
But the physical forms also die out as those individuals who would normally occupy them are being culled, put aside until another round of evolution.
So the consciousnesses that are not evolved enough kind of go dormant
Exactly.
for a while. Okay.
Exactly.
And we've heard other things like that in this teaching so far. That they're going to wait till the next ring round something.
Well, not the next round, the next wave of humanity, the next cycle of evolution.
Not much to divide over some millions of years that man passes on one planet. Not much to divide over some millions of years that man passes on one planet.
So remember that even they say that humanity is only several million years old. Before that, just like science says, it was the evolution of minerals, then of plants, then of animals, and only lately, in geological terms, that man even showed up on Earth.
Let us take but 1 million years, suspected and now accepted by your science, to represent man's entire term upon our earth in this round, and allowing an average of a century for each life, we find that whereas he has passed in all his lives upon our planet in this round, but 77,700 years, he has been in the subjective spheres 922,300 years. Okay, this is, thank you, Mr. KH, for giving some solid information here. Thank you.
Well, we're thrown off balance by these questions that they're coming up with. He's having to first tell them how wrong they are and why they're wrong, and then he gives them the correct information.
Let's please look at the tangible facts that he just said, though. I think this is important for context.
Exactly.
Let us take but 1 million years, suspected and now accepted by your science, to represent man's entire term upon our earth in this round. Let's pause right there. Okay. Man's entire term upon our earth in this round, in the fourth round.
This is one man, one individual, one monad.
1 million years. Okay, that is the entire prodigal son journey?
No. The prodigal son is
all the kingdoms.
This is only the human portion of it.
Okay. 1 million years it takes approximately. Okay. And from primitive human, baby, soul human to adept.
Right. Well, on the verge of adeption.
Well, okay.
Yes.
1 million, wow. And then he goes further and allowing an average of he's saying 100 years for each life, which certainly wasn't the case back then.
No.
But to make it easy, an average of 100 years for each life, we find that whereas he has passed in all his lives upon our planet in this round, 77,700 years.
He's saying that one individual who keeps reincarnating 777 times, if they lived, and many of those lifetimes are not counted for various reasons. But if they live a total in physical form 77,700 years, he has been in the subjective spheres 922,300 years.
Do you think that means Bardo in between incarnations?
Yes, absolutely.
That would make sense because 77,000 years in a body, what about all the multiplied times of that? That didn't come out right. In between incarnations.
Exactly.
That's got to be what the subjective...
What he's saying is that we spend 10 times as much time out of the body as we do in the body.
That's true. And if you add those two together, it's 1 million years.
Right.
That makes so much sense. It's just they're saying it in such different words. And we've said this many times to our viewers that the time in between lives is way longer than the time in a body, in a physical.
Right.
KH, thank you. You rock. All right. Not much encouragement for the extreme modern reincarnationists who remember their several previous existences.
And he's talking about these advanced spiritualists who, like Anna Kingsford, who supposedly remember several past lifetimes, one right after the other.
We don't believe reincarnation works that way.
Not normally.
Yeah.
Not normally.
Not normally.
Now,
Right.
if you are on a fast track, that can be cut down quite a bit.
Yeah.
So that would be the exception rather than the rule.
And the fast track wouldn't happen until you're
you're
farther along.
well along on the path.
So we're still answering question 7b.
Right.
Should you indulge in any calculations, like I clearly am? My apologies. I just want it to make sense. We're spending time. I want it to make sense, or a little bit of sense at least.
Yeah, we want our money's worth.
Yeah, exactly. Come on. Value. Do not forget that we have computed above only full average lives of consciousness and responsibility. Nothing has been said as to the failures of nature in spontaneous abortions, congenital idiots, death of children in their first
So
septenary
spontaneous abortion means miscarriage.
cycle. What does he mean by idiots?
Individuals who were born with mentally defective.
Okay. Death of children in their first septenary cycles, meaning prior to 7 years old.
Yeah.
Wow. Because that's the age of reason, so that those lives aren't counted.
Yeah.
So they probably reincarnate
right.
quickly.
Yes, usually.
Nor of the exceptions of which I cannot speak. Ooh, that's probably black magic stuff. Maybe. Plus, you have to remember that average human life varies greatly according to the rounds. Okay, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Though I am obliged to withhold information about many points, still, if you should work out any of the problems by yourself, it'll be my duty to tell you. That's cool. He's giving a hint. He's like, if you figure it out, I cannot lie that
exactly.
That's cool.
I have to confirm that you figured it out.
And then he says, try to solve the problem of the 777 incarnations. What the problem of 777?
Well, what I'm thinking is he only told us 350, and then he made a jump to 777. So he's saying, here's a hint for you. Try to figure out why it's 777, and then if you figure it out, I'll tell you. If you figure it out, I'll tell you.
Huh. Okay. Oh, I love it. My goodness.
A mystery.
Let's figure it out later.
Yeah. As soon as we hang up.
Yeah.
All right. Question number 8. Moria said all mankind is in the 4th round. The 5th has not yet commenced, but soon will. Was this a slip? If not, then combining this with your present remarks, we gather that all mankind is on the 4th round, and that the highest people now on earth belong to the first subrace of the 5th race, the majority to the 7th subrace of the 4th race, but with remnants of the other subraces of the 4th race, and the 7th subrace of the 3rd race. Please set us straight on this.
Wow.
Again, they get very focused, and I think that this has a lot to do with Hume because of his brilliant mind. He likes to obsess about all of this to make sure that they know what they're actually talking about.
Moria knows very little English and hates writing, but even I might have used the same expression, meaning all mankind is in the 4th round. The 5th has not yet commenced. The 5th round has not commenced on our Earth.
And so remember, he was saying that these 5th round individuals who are only in a 4th round body are running faster than the rest of humanity. So they are on the fast track.
The 5th round has not commenced on our Earth, and the races and sub-races of one round must not be confounded with those of another round. Confounded? That means confused?
Confused.
I thought they were overlapping. I thought the new races come in and we're still here for a few hundred or thousand or million years.
Not by too much, because if they get too far behind, then they're not going to keep up with the rest of humanity. Humanity as a group has to move within certain variations. You don't have this huge gamut.
But since the planet is not going to go extinct for a day, and then all of a sudden the first baby is going to somehow emerge from the fifth.
No, there has to be a transition.
Right, so they are overlapping for
Of course they
a while.
do, but not by a huge amount in geological times. We don't have the ones who came in as the cavemen who didn't make any progress still entering into physical bodies today.
Right. The fifth round mankind may be said to have commenced when there is not left on the planet which precedes ours a single man of that round, and on our earth not one of the fourth round. Wow, his English is suspect there. So he's saying that it commences when the very last one of the last race dies.
It sounds like that.
Even though the whole...
Well, I think, I mean, you have to have a transition period, obviously, but you don't consider it the fifth race, human physical body, until the last fourth round individual, as far as development, has left.
He does say that. He says the fifth round may be said to have commenced when there is not left on the planet which precedes ours a single... on the planet that precedes ours. On the planet that precedes ours.
Okay.
So the previous planet in your chart there, it's when that one... that makes more sense, actually.
Okay, I'm not sure, but
that's what he's...
Let's go with that.
Well, he says, not left on the planet which precedes ours, a single man of that round, and on our earth, not one of the fourth round. You should know also that the occasional fifth round men, and they are very few and scarce, who come in upon us as forerunners, do not beget on earth fifth round progeny. So they don't have babies that are...
There are so few and far between that if they had a child who was of the same level of development, it would be extremely rare. So he said it just really doesn't happen.
And it also is safe to say that when we're talking about fifth round people, they're more advanced in certain ways. They're not adepts, but
they are, some of them may be. Actually, the adepts are among the fifth round.
So is KH and Moria
absolutely
fifth round?
Absolutely. They don't ever brag about it, but they are.
And are there physical characteristics of fifth round?
Mainly what they are able to control, like they live many years.
They have abilities.
Longer. They are more purified. Their physical body is more purified. They don't get ill like we do. And
being just 150 years approximately after this, not quite that long, but we're still about the same. There still are not very many fifth.
A very minute increase in fifth round individuals.
And the rounds are different than the races. The rounds are different than the races, which we haven't really discussed in detail yet. So we're not even talking about the races. Okay.
I can't wait until you teach this in college courses.
Well, there's so many other things that I think that are so hard to grasp before this. I can't wait till I understand this enough to teach it for sure. Okay. Plato and Confucius were fifth round men. Mm-hmm. And our Lord, Buddha, a sixth round man. Wow. A sixth round before the fifth even gets started.
Yeah. He ran very, very fast.
I think we might have said that before, but it didn't really sink in what that meant.
Good thing we're repeating it.
Yeah, exactly. The mystery of his avatar, meaning his physical, like Siddhartha Gautama.
Right.
The mystery of his avatar is spoken of in my forthcoming letter. Ooh, I can't wait. And even Gautama Buddha's son wasn't more than a fourth round man. I didn't know he
See?
had a son.
Apparently he did.
Holy crap. So there's a lineage? There's got to be.
Yeah, but what he's saying is
He was
that
fourth,
he
yeah.
wasn't any more advanced than normal humanity. He didn't become a Buddha because his father became a Buddha.
So a fourth round person can't be ready to graduate from the human realm because you haven't made it through the other rounds yet. Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
Well, you may be a fifth round person or at least on the border of it. All of the more advanced chelas are definitely.
Wow.
And, if you've been studying this and really practicing it for 2 or 3 lifetimes, you're probably on the verge of becoming a fifth round individual.
Our mystic terms, in their clumsy retranslation from Sanskrit to English, are as confusing to us as they are to you. I'm so glad he says that.
Yeah, especially
To Moria. That's funny. Unless, in writing to you, one of us takes his pen as an adept and uses it from the first word to the last in this capacity, he is quite as liable to slips as any other man. No, we are not in the fifth round.
as humanity.
But fifth round men... okay. No, we are not in the fifth round, but fifth round men have been coming in for the last few thousand years.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. But what is such a small stretch of time in comparison with even 1 million of the several millions of years embraced in man's occupancy of Earth in a single round?
Yeah.
Holy freaking moly.
But here's the important thing which he said. Unless in writing to you, one of us, meaning the adepts, takes his pen as an adept and uses it from the first word to the last in this capacity, he is quite as liable to slips as any other man. It's only at certain times that they're acting as an adept.
Interesting.
They have to be in touch, completely controlled by their higher self in order to express their adeptship. When they're not doing that, when they're washing dishes or taking out the trash, they're just an ordinary individual like you and I are. And if they're writing a letter and not really accessing that power that they have, then they can make mistakes. And some of these letters are dozens of pages long. So, and they get written in bits and pieces. They don't sit down and write a letter for 12 hours. They take 20 minutes here or 20 minutes there, and they add to them. That's one of the reasons why some of these letters are so far between.
They take a long time. I didn't say that was signed KH after that. That's the end of that letter.
And he didn't sign it off anything special, just KH. So you want to cover the next one?
I don't think so. I have to apologize for my rants on this one. I have to apologize to our audience too, but I feel like if I'm going to help with this, I need to understand it, and you might as well watch my process of pressuring him to explain it.
and my inability to explain.
Well, no, that just shows it shows that I don't grasp this well, and I'm going to meditate on it.
And that's where the insight comes. Yeah. Learn what you can, as foggy as it is, and then in your meditation, focus on one aspect of it, not the whole thing, or maybe you'll get an insight into the general picture. That's also good.
Yeah, that is also good.
But you will quite often get inspiration on details. Another thing that you can accomplish during your meditation is the thing we discussed at the very beginning. How do I learn to have unconditional love for all humanity? That's not something that most people would even dream of. How do I do that? And one practice that you can have is pick one person that you absolutely hate, whether it's a personal acquaintance, family member, political figure, person in history who died 50 years ago or 1,000 years ago, someone that you absolutely hate. And then put them in your meditation and see if you can find any connection with that person as a human being. Think of them as a child when most people would have considered them completely spotless
And
and
innocent.
pure. Innocent.
Before the age of 7, perhaps.
And what experiences before that or after that period brought them up to be a dictator or an evil despot or a murderer? And just see what you can figure out. This is what meditation is for, to solve problems, to move forward. And that's where the insight comes from. Meditation is always the answer.
It is. I also want to commend you publicly for for being so awesome today. After you had a procedure yesterday, you had a big old needle in your neck.
Yeah, they had a vampire that
Sucked your blood.
sucked my blood. No, they injected something into my spine.
And he's like new today. And we're also far later in the afternoon, so I want to commend you for you got extra energy, which is amazing.
We both do what we can.
Yes.
We have many other obligations in life, and so this is a work of love, though. We absolutely love the work that we're doing, and if it serves as inspiration for even a few people, then we feel that we are well rewarded for the effort. All right. Well, we will see you next time in our session number 30.
Yes, and thank you for putting up with me today. And I'm not sure if our audience is actually seeing all this, because I'm sure a lot of it has been cut out by the time you see this.
And that's perfectly fine. And this is another reason why we do our timeline in the description. Always look at those, and you can tell by those timestamps whether it's something you can skip.
Paul asks another question about rounds. Skip. No. All
We
right.
try to give you all the tools that you need to navigate these.
To skip what you need.
Yes.
Namaste.
All right. Thank you for following along.
Thank you.